Well, before I start, I was say, did you guys get a chance to go back and listen to Bud's message again? Because it was really good.
Yeah.
Did you listen to it, Bud? You watched it a few times? No, it was a really good message last week. I really enjoyed it. I was reading the notes over this last week when I was studying, and man, I could totally re-preach his message. It was good stuff. So, but I'm not going to do that. So. But no, I've been spending a lot of time praying about different things, and one of the things that has really been on my mind recently, and the title of my message today, because I want to have a really cool title to get people's attention, is Religion is Evil. Okay, because I figured that would catch people's attention, all right? Like, what do you mean religion's evil? I was reading some people that were posting things, and I always like doing that every now and then online, and between that and talking with different people, and one of the things I was reading, you know how when you study something in history and you might forget a name or whatever, and I don't know if you guys ever studied Roman history. There was a poet named Lucretius or something like that. I heard of him before, but somebody was throwing around a quote, and I was reading this one person was posting things about religion being evil and wrong, and he had used this quote where it says, "How many evils have flowed from religion?" It was a quote from Lucretius or whatever, one of his poems. But how many evils have flowed from religion? And, and I started thinking about that because honestly, a lot of times, if people watch this, you might be a Christian, you might think, well, what are you getting at? What are you talking about? Yeah, well, honestly, when it comes right down to it, you look at the world, you look at the things that have been going on all through history. Religion has produced tons and tons of absolute evil things. I mean, it has. I mean, it absolutely, you look at the different things that have happened through history because of religion. You look at all these different things and different, people that have done these horrible things. I mean, religion controls, religion manipulates, religion, is a cause of all types of horrible things. I mean, when you think about it, religion has done a lot of bad things in the world, and that was something I've been really thinking about, and I kind of think about it from this perspective. When Lucretius wrote this, it was in the 1st century BC. Oh, and first of all, before you start, you might want to turn down the air because it's going to get really hot really quick. I just thought about that because last time when I started preaching, I was like sweating because it was so hot. I get hot really quick. But I was thinking this 1st century, when Lucretius had written this, I was trying to think about all the things that were going on during this time because he wrote it before Jesus was around. There's a lot of other quotes I could use, with different people that say the same type of thing. There was a funny quote from Mark Twain where he talked about how the globe is filled with tombs and as a graveyard of people that were murdered, by religion to make a better path for the righteous or something, and all these crazy quotes. But I like Lucretius because he based how many evils have flowed from religion. I started thinking about the 1st century, Jerusalem, the Mecca of all religion. I mean, you've got this major point where you have these people and they're always struggling to try to keep the purity of their religion. And you have this 1st century where the Romans have taken over, but this group of people called the Pharisees show up. This group of people that basically had taken this religion of Judaism and turned it into something to where every little thing they had a law for. There was a law. There was, you do it this way, this way, this way. It became this just absolute, their whole life was driven on laws and how to do things. Go ahead and turn to Matthew 12. That's what I want to talk about today. It's fun. I was listening to a pastor talk about this. He said he was preaching on Pharisees, and he said he got up in front of the church and he was preaching at a very, we call it denominational type church, and very conservative and old style, and he got up and he said, okay, he goes, before we get started, I'd like to find out. He has his chalkboard out here, and he says, I want to write down all of the good things that you know about a Pharisee. Most people who are Christians, they know of the Pharisees. I mean, they know about them. You hear about it. The Pharisees were the sect of people who were very religious and very, driven by their ideas of how religion should be. But she said, okay, tell me some of the good things about Pharisees, And he says, okay, let's start, they attend synagogue regularly. Okay, that's a good one. They're very moral people. Yeah, they're probably very, they would give even beyond the 10%. They were definitely, okay, they're tithers, they go to church every Sunday, they're very moral people. What else? So they pray. Oh yeah, they pray 3, 4, 5, 10 times a day. People saw them praying, so they knew they prayed, all of these different things. And he said as he started to write them, one of the guys in the front row kind of starts making a funny face, and he goes, well, what's wrong? And he goes, that kind of describes us, And he goes, well, is there something wrong? Something wrong with that? Well, The Bible, Jesus referred to the Pharisees as the sons of Satan. He said to the Pharisees, "You hypocrites, you brood of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell?" So the Pharisees really wouldn't be the type of people you want to do. So what was the problem? What was the problem? They had a religion. They had a tradition. They had something that they were so passionate and so just, absolutely on fire about, but it didn't have substance. All of those things that I just talked about, and I can guarantee you, and probably people even listening today, you think, well, yeah, I go to church every Sunday, I tithe, I give, I pray, I read my Bible, I know my Bible, I know it cover to cover. Well, yeah, so did the Pharisees. And it's amazing that Jesus' problem with the Pharisees wasn't any of these things. It was that they didn't have the substance. Look at this in Matthew chapter 12. Matthew chapter 12, and start in verse 1. I'm going to read a few scriptures here. And Jesus says, and it's the time, the Sabbath day. This is the day that basically, according to Jewish tradition, you didn't do anything. And the Pharisees even took it further. They actually had 39 different laws that you had to obey on the Sabbath. And at this time, Jesus went, on the Sabbath day through a grain field. He was on his way actually to the synagogue. And so he's cutting through the grain field, right? And his disciples were hungry. You know how it is if you don't eat before you go to church and you're sitting there thinking, oh man, the person next to me is going to hear my stomach growling. And it makes it worse here because I cook food, so you can smell the food cooking while I'm preaching here. And you're not really getting what I'm saying, you're just hearing your stomach growl. So, these guys were hungry. They're going to the synagogue, right? And they're getting ready to go to church on Sunday morning. And back then, Jesus Saturday. But anyways, they're going on their way to church. They didn't eat anything. So they began to just kind of grab the grains off the field. I don't even know how to do it. It just shows you how far removed we are from that type of, if I was in a field full of grain, I wouldn't know what the heck you could eat and what you couldn't. But these guys are pulling things off and they're eating them, whatever they're doing, and they're rubbing them in their hands and throwing the kernels in their mouth or whatever. And the Pharisees saw it, and they said to Jesus, they're like, "Behold, your disciples do what is not lawful on the Sabbath." Behold, look at these guys. You're supposed to be this great teacher, and your disciples don't even obey the laws of the Sabbath. Look at him, and look at what Jesus says. It says he said to them, they said to him first. They said to him, "Have you not read?" Okay, so behold, the disciples do what's not lawful on the Sabbath. And then Jesus said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he became hungry, he and his companions? They entered into the house of God, and they ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to eat, nor for those who were with him, but for the priest alone. Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple break the Sabbath and are innocent? But I say to you that something greater than the temple is here." Now this is what's amazing. Jesus says, look, you're making a big deal about my disciples eating something, but you forget something here. David, this person that you hold in high esteem, on his way, and you read the story where he's on his way and they're running from Saul and him and his men, and they went to the temple and said, we need to eat. We're hungry. And the priest says, the only food we have here is this bread that's consecrated. He says, well, let me have it. They were hungry. They needed to eat. And the amazing, in their culture, the priest on the Sabbath, when they would sacrifice, what they would do is basically they had the old covenant where you'd sacrifice an animal, for forgiveness of sin. It was this horrible way that they used to do things. And so the priest, every single Sabbath day, would take the sacrifice, kill the sacrifice and offer it. So he would work on the Sabbath, but he was innocent. And so Jesus is saying, look, you guys, you're hypocrites. You're saying because my disciples are eating something, they're breaking the Sabbath. But you don't understand that something greater than any of these things is here right now. And then verse 7, he says, "But if you had known what this means, that I desire compassion and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." How many evils have come about because they believed they were sacrificing for God?